welcome to the first episode of the Gamer1Pro Pogcast, where I talk about current events and anything and everything else I want to talk about right here on my YouTube channel. This podcast is intended to be a way for me to let what I'm thinking out into the world, while also allowing other people to provide their input into the topics discussed on the podcast. I'm excited to get into it, so let's start off with the main topic of today: new copyright laws. So, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina introduced legislation called the Protected Streaming Act of 2020 to the omnibus that would make using unauthorized media in your content, basically, but it's the main focus of the content, a felony. So this would be copyright infringement. The omnibus is a set of bills that gets jammed into the. So, I do want to explain the omnibus really quick. And the omnibus is a set of bills that gets jammed in with the national spending bill at the end of the year every year. So basically, if the national spending bill passes, which is a must-pass bill to keep the government open, the omnibus will pass. So when the news of this bill first surfaced that copyright infringement would now become a felony, people were shocked, and I was too. But I wasn't convinced about it yet because I didn't see the text and I didn't see what people what tech advocacy and internet advocacy groups thought about it. You know, were people were looking at it and saying like these things aren't felonies and you're gonna make streaming a felony, streaming copyrighted material a felony. And it was hard to formulate an exact opinion on this because we didn't really know what it was for. And when the bill came out a few days ago, I read it. I interpreted the way I wanted to, or I thought it was right. And I also looked at what the senator had to say and what um, tech advocacy groups such as Public Knowledge and the CCIA had to say. So basically, this bill, the Protected Streaming Act of 2020, makes it unlawful to willfully and for purposes of commercial advantage or private financial gain offer or provide to the public a digital transmission service that is primarily designed, provided for the purpose of publicly performing works protected under the Title 17 by means of a digital transmission without the authority of the copyright owner or the law. Has no commercially significant purpose or use other than to publicly perform works protected under Title 17 by means of digital transmission without the authority of the copyright owner or the law, or 3, is intentionally marketed by or at direction of that person to promote its use in publicly performing works protected under Title 17 by means of digital transmission without authority. Yeah, you get it. So, what this means, that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo that you're not going to understand. You might not understand. This basically just means it'll become a felony now to use copyrighted material as the main focus of your content. So that's why when I first recorded this podcast, it was inaccurate. I recorded it yesterday and I was getting ready to put it out today, but it was inaccurate. And I wanted to redo this podcast to talk about this. And so Senator Tom Tillis, in a couple of tweets, sent out a response to an American Prospect article. So the American Prospect made an article on this about how it'll become a felony for uh for copyright infringement, and currently copyright infringement like through digital transmission, so YouTube and Twitch and stuff. That's a misdemeanor. You can only be fined $1,000, and you can only be put in county jail for 1 year if convicted on copyright infringement. Um, so, but there's a difference also. If you reproduce works, like if you reproduce works without the correct rights or permissions, and it's something like if you reproduce the works and or use it's a felony. There is a felony for copyright stuff, but that's usually just if you reproduce it without the correct rights or something. I don't really know, but in this series of tweets, he noted how the American Prospect article was inaccurate because this bill is narrowly tailored, and I quote, "The proposal is narrowly tailored and only allows the DOJ to prosecute commercial criminal organizations, not individual streamers. It's drafted to not sweep in normal practices by online service providers and good faith business disputes. That's why tech groups like the CCIA and public user groups like Public Knowledge have not come out against the proposal and in fact have no concerns about with its substance." And this is true. Um, Senator Tillis is referring to Public Knowledge and the CCIA. Public Knowledge is a um, public internet advocacy group that promotes freedom of expression and open internet and access to affordable communications tools and creative works. They work to shape the policy on behalf of public interest. So people look to these organizations to tell them, is this bill good for the consumer? Is this bill going to not just the consumer but also the creator? Is this going to screw people over? And in my initial podcast, my initial recording, I detailed how, in my opinion, I believed that this bill could be used maliciously against small streamers. And this is just not small streamers, but small content creators that make money. And this is just untrue. After doing some secondary research last night, because I was getting pictures and stuff, I reread the things and I read a couple things, and it said how it's only if the copyrighted material is the main focus of the work. So basically, if you're re-uploading a song and doing nothing to it and making money off of it, that's copyright. That's the felony. That becomes a felony. And so, um, quickly, just want to go over, with it being a felony, that means you can be like prisoned for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, depends on the severity of the case and how many times there's been infringement. And you can also be fined as well. So, Public Knowledge and the CCIA say that it is not. They don't oppose the bill, while they do oppose further criminal punishments for copyright stuff. They don't oppose this bill. The Protected Streaming Act of 2020 basically is only targeted to people and organizations that use unlicensed work as their sole way of getting their income, as their sole way of making money. It's not, it's not for if you have like playing music in the background and it's unlicensed, like it's copyrighted music, you're playing it in the background, you're not gonna get a felony for that. Or if music plays in the back in your game and it's copyrighted, you're not gonna get a felony. And this is the misconception that some people received, was that streamers and YouTubers are gonna get felonies for breaking copyright law, and this is just untrue. It's not gonna do that. And as I said in my last recording, I said how this could be used maliciously against smaller creators and other creators. This is just blatantly wrong. This bill is only for if the copyrighted material is the main focus of the work. So like if you re-upload a song without doing anything to it or something. But so people are looking at the wrong copyright bill though. There's another copyright bill that's being pushed into the omnibus, and it's called where is it? The Copyright Alternative in Small Claims Enforcement Act. So this is the CASE Act. It's a bipartisan bill, I believe. That okay, while it's on my mind, before we get into the CASE Act, people believe that this was like a very malicious thing, the Protected Streaming Act of 2020, was because they looked at Tom Tillis's donors, and a lot of groups that hold copyright are his donors. They are lobbying him. He got money from them for his campaign or something, and then he's doing. It's not bribing. This is something that happens all the time, but that's where the influence is coming from, and I guess that's kind of true if this was something that's going to hurt creators, but it's not really. So the Case Act. The Case Act is an act that creates copyright claims board inside of the US Copyright Office. And this board can fine up to $30,000 per case of copyright infringement. And it's not governed the same way as it's governed differently as how current small claims go. So currently, small claims go through small claims courts through the judicial branch. They only and they cannot give fines that are like $30,000 for one case. $30,000 is about 5 times the average that the small claims courts gives. And while the bill does have an opt-out feature where you can opt out of going to the board and you go to the claims court, people are not going to know about it. So if the Case Act does pass, people are not going to know about this opt-out feature. They're not going to know that they can opt out of the Case Act, or not the Case Act, but the Copyright Claims Board, and they can go to court. You have to pay your own legal fees, I believe, uh, for the for Copyright Claims Board, and to try and defend yourself in court or to this board. And the problem with this board is that it's not regulated the same way that a small claims court is. It doesn't get regulated as our judicial branch does. You know how we have 3 branches and each branch checks the power, the judicial branch, legislative branch, and the executive branch, and each branch checks the power. It's balanced, kind of. This would remove small claims from being in this process. It wouldn't be part of our judicial system. It'd just be its own little board in the U.S. Copyright Claims Office, or Copyright Office, and that's not good. It's not going to be subject to the same rules as our judicial system is currently. Also, this board will allow for easy troll copyright claims. So people making copyright claims falsely or fraudulent copyright claims. That's the word. That's not good, especially because you have to pay your own legal fees. When you get to the board, it's just going to waste time and money. Plus, this board can bankrupt people. You know, if 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 claiming content is this easy using a claims board, you could have people losing a lot of money and possibly going bankrupt. This is not a good thing. That's why the CCIA and public knowledge are very much against the Case Act. And this is the copyright bill people should be worrying about. It should not be the Protected Streaming Act 2020, because the Protected Streaming Act 2020 is narrowly tailored, and I understand how it's narrowly tailored to only hit people and groups, organizations that are using content as their main focus of getting income, or not or using copyrighted content as their main way of making money and getting financial gain. And there are people out there who don't understand this bill, and they believe that when they went through the bill, it says how um, you if you make, basically, if it's for public commercial gain or if it's for private financial gain, you're subject to the bill, to the law. But this is just but they're not looking into how it you have to, like, if I look at the one sec, the text of the bill, um and go to if you open text of the bill and section 2 part B where it says prohibited act, I already read this earlier, where it shall be unlawful. If you listen carefully to the three rules I gave, the is primarily designed to provide for the purpose of publicly performing works without the authority of the copyright owner. So this is a paraphrase. So basically, using the content, the copyrighted work, as the primary thing, or doesn't have commercially significant purpose other than to use this song. So I'm gonna use songs as an example. So basically, if the song is the primary part of the content and they do not have a license to use this song in their content, then they're subject to this law. Or if the content has no commercially significant purpose or use other than to perform this song without the correct licenses, that's against this law. Or if it's intentionally marketed of the person to then use this in publicly performing works. It's not going to apply to an individual streamer unless that person is using primarily just a song. So with that, you could think about like music people and people who do music streams on Twitch or make music videos on, not like music videos, but videos about music on YouTube. These people have the correct licenses usually. They're not going to be hit with this. Um, and plus, it usually has some other use. Like they're using it as a cover. They're doing a cover of the song. They then have the rights to do the cover of the song. They're not doing it maliciously. They're changing parts of this song because they're using their own vocals, or maybe they're even playing their own guitar or something. So this is the Protected Streaming Act 2020 is not going to hurt individual people unless they're literally using the works for commercial gain, financial gain, without changing the works at all, or anything that or it doesn't have any other use except to just play that song. So that's why I believe that people are freaking out about the wrong copyright bill. I should be freaking out about the Case Act, because this act easily allows for trolls to submit copyright claims. This can then in turn bankrupt people because I believe they have to pay like their own legal fees. And I don't know if they have like the right to an attorney, and I'm sure that they'll get a public defender if they can't afford it, but it's still not good, especially because this board can charge the $30,000 per infringement case, or infringement like infraction, like every time that it happens. That's a lot of money. And no, of course it's not gonna be $30,000 every time, but that's 5 times the national average of small claims courts, where currently copyright claims are dealt with. So yeah, I do hope this opens some eyes and allows for you to know a bit more about what's happening in terms of copyright on Twitch and YouTube and all that stuff. I do hope that you enjoy this podcast. I do want to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section. In the description, I'll have the links to most of my sources, or probably all the sources that I remember. Um, Other than that, I do hope that you have a good holiday. If I don't see you again by Christmas or whatever, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. I know Hanukkah already started, but yeah. So I want to hear your thoughts, as I said, in the comments, and yeah. So don't freak out about the copyright unless you're freaking out about the correct one, and do your research about stuff. I do hope, and also, as I've already said, I do hope that you have a great holiday, and thank you for listening to this podcast. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.